everyone is doing good. And today we have a special day because we're gonna have a special guest. And I'm not gonna take much of your time today because I really want you to concentrate on the on the testimony that our guest is gonna give you. So I'm just gonna welcome our guest today. So yeah, let me welcome our guest today. So hey Carla,
Hi, Bella. How are you?
good. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really glad that you are here, and so I'm just gonna welcome you, and you're gonna share with us your testimony today.
Okay, thank you.
So most welcome. Oh,
Thank you. Okay, so I could start by giving you a short introduction of myself and um, why we're here having this conversation today. So my name is Carla Beharry. I work in Kitchener Waterloo as a life coach, as an empowerment coach, and I run speaking events for both men and women who have overcome adversity in their life. So I run an event called Stories of Resilience and Challenge in woke men and woke women. And the idea is to have a platform for people, especially those in racialized and marginalized communities, to have a platform to share their voice, to talk about their own personal stories of overcoming things like pain and trauma and grief and suffering. And the intention behind this work comes from my own experience of going through a few pretty big traumatic experiences in my life. Uh, so the one that I wanted to share today is one that you and I have spoken about. And in 2016, so 4 years ago, I was in a bad accident. I was a yoga a teacher, so I full time. My entire career depended on my physical body. So I had spent years and years, like 20 years, training to be in the health and wellness field. And um, I started down this path offering yoga and movement and natural medicine. So I was working full time and I went to a yoga teacher training. And this is something, I've done many times before. I'm very comfortable in that environment. And I went to a yoga teacher training. It was in Edmonton and I was meant to be there for a week. And so I arrived at the airport in Edmonton and the woman who was running the training had arrived there to pick me up, and she was in a new SUV. She had a big fancy car, and so she pulled up to the airport parking lot to pick me up, and she was distracted and she was talking to somebody else. And I was standing outside of the car with my suitcase, and we were waiting to get into the car, and she was talking to her friend, and so I was by myself outside of the car and was going to put my suitcase in the car, and she was not paying attention and she took off and started driving, and I wasn't in the vehicle. And so in the process of her pulling away from the curb, she knocked me down and I was on the ground on the pavement, and then she drove over me with the tire of her car.
oh my God.
So, I it was one of these experiences for me where something changed within 10 seconds in my life. Like I was used to having a strong physical body and used to being someone that is your lifestyle, right? So for me, my entire life and lifestyle was living in this world where I practice movement and I practice meditation and I practice, really guiding other people through these practices. And within 10 seconds, my life had changed. Uh, so she knocked me down and drove over me with her car. And then, I was, of course, what ensued after that for me was a very chaotic time. And, so I was hysterical on the ground, and I I almost lost my leg. So at that time, I was, my foot was hanging off my body, and I was going into shock. And many people around at the airport were saying to her, like, call an ambulance. This woman needs an ambulance. And instead of calling an ambulance, her and her friend picked me up and put me into the back seat of the car, and drove away from the airport. And if I would go back in time, I was in shock, but if I could go back in time, I would have used my voice more strongly in that moment. So they're taking me to a hospital, and the entire time when we're driving there, I was screaming, like, drop me off. I just leave me at the side of the road. I need an ambulance. Um and so we finally got to this hospital, and they took me into the hospital waiting room, and then they left me there. And one thing that has been a big life lesson for me, and I know we'll talk more about things that I've learned through this experience, but I really took for granted the fact that, oh, these women are in yoga and they're in wellness, so that means they're going to take care of me. And that means they're going to have compassion, and that means they're going to have empathy. And I really trusted that. So for me, one of the things that has been the hardest for me in this situation that I've learned a lot about is not just the physical injury, but the sense of betrayal I felt in really trusting these women deeply to care for me in that moment. So I was at the hospital, and, suddenly thrown into this environment where I was being given morphine and drugs, I had a conversation with a surgeon, and she said to me, you need to go into surgery right away. So I was away from my family, away from anyone I knew. So, for those that don't live in this part of Canada, Edmonton is like a 5-hour plane ride from my home. So I was by myself. So before I could even call anyone in my family, I was being put into surgery, and she wanted to reset all the bones of my foot. So all of my foot had been shattered by her car tire. And so I went into surgery, and they started giving me these medications, ketamine and fentanyl. And, I don't take a lot of medication in my life. Like, I practiced and went to school for homeopathic medicine. So I was very used to using natural medicine in my body. And so she started giving me all of these medications, and I had an allergic reaction to the medication, and then I stopped breathing. So the last thing that I remember is grabbing my throat and saying, something's wrong, I can't breathe. And in that moment, I knew something was very wrong. And then I was out. And, what happened in that time for me, I often describe as feeling like it was an out of body or a near death experience, because I had these, like, very vivid hallucinations that were very, like, terrifying and terrorizing, and then went into being very calming and very, like, where I almost felt totally at peace. And I woke up a while later with about 5 doctors around me saying, like, you scared us, you stopped breathing, and, had, like, oxygen on. And by that time, my foot was in a cast. So I know within that time they were able to give me oxygen and to repair my foot. Thank goodness. Because, there have been times where my mind has thought about this fact of, like, what if I had never called my family in that time, and I got rushed into this hospital, and, within an hour, like, this is how trauma and accidents happen, right? And so to skip forward in the story, so about 10 days later, I was able to come home, and I had a surgery and had metal pins put into my foot. And much of my learning in this experience comes from what happened for me in the 6 months after that accident, and then what happened really. But it's been 4 years now, but I'm still in the process of deeply healing and learning. So at the time, I lived on my own in an apartment that had stairs. I was in a cast. I was in a wheelchair. I had walkers. And, for those of us that really value our human body as very sacred, we don't often think about the fact that, like, what would it feel like if you didn't have access to this body? Like, I didn't realize how much of a privilege it was to live in a healthy body until I didn't have that anymore. And so I had to relearn everything in my life. So I would be in my apartment. I wasn't able to leave. And thank goodness my family was very close by. Thank goodness they lived about 10 minutes away. So they were able to help me get food. But, I couldn't carry anything because I needed crutches or both of my hands. So it would take me about 4 to 6 hours in the morning to get out of bed. And I would have to carry bags around my shoulder. Like, I had a satchel that I carried where I could carry a bottle of water. And so it would take me about 4 to 6 hours to make my way, like, across my apartment, to bathe myself. Like, I had a full cast and metal pins sticking out of my foot and my ankle, so that wasn't allowed to get wet for months. So I would have to, like, ease myself into, like, a warm bathtub, and then figure out how to, like, make my way into the kitchen and make food sitting on a walker. And there are many days in there where, I would be just 1 centimeter away from the counter. Like, I would reach over to try to put a plate or a glass on the counter, and I'd miss it by a centimeter, and then it would shatter on the ground. And those would be the moments that would bring me to tears. Like, it's those small things that really we take for granted in our life, right? That and I had many moments of just being too exhausted to really function. So I would just lie on my floor in tears. And but what also happened in that time is, like, slowly starting after a few months when I was able to start moving again. It was a slow process, so I went from a wheelchair to a walker to crutches. And I finally was able to start going into different therapies. So going to physical therapy and physiotherapy. And what happens in that time is, like, it's a lot of physical trauma in your body. Like, I had experiences of, like, surgeons, like, literally using pliers to pull metal out of my body, and screaming hysterically, and this repetition of trauma, right? And so I remember the first day I went to my physiotherapist, and he was about a 10-minute walk from where I was. So I used to use a cane, and I would walk down this pathway with a cane to get to his office. And the first time I saw him, I was in a cast, and he said, "Okay, take off your cast." And it was an air cast, so I was able to undo it. And so he said, "Take off your cast," and I was like, "I can't take it off." And he's like, "Try to take it off." And he really encouraged me to take this cast off, and so I did. And he said, "Take a step forward."
All that time you were in a wheelchair, were you, like, alone? Nobody who was helping you, or?
So I had my parents and my brother, and they would come, and they helped me a lot with doing groceries and with helping to clean my house and making me food. So I'm so blessed that I had family and friends to help. And then when I started seeing different therapists, that was really a big support for me in my life. Uh, that was very encouraging because, I would go in feeling, once you have the protection of a wheelchair and a cast, to suddenly take those off feels very scary. I wasn't even able to put weight down onto my body, right? And, in this man, I remember he just kept encouraging me, and he's like, "Take one more step, take one more step." And the first day I worked with him, I was in tears. He encouraged me to keep moving, and one step at a time. And he eventually got me into a swimming pool, and I had a big plastic bandage that I put over my cast, and that feeling of getting into the water for the first time was, it felt miraculous, like magical, to be able to move my body again.
After a long time, I understand.
Yes, yeah. So that's the physical part of it. But what for me has become the bigger practice now is the mental, emotional, spiritual healing and practice that have come along with it. And through that time, I had one particular like pretty big panic attack a couple years after the accident. I was walking down the street and I had something triggered in me this feeling of I can't breathe. And I had just come from the doctor's office and I was walking home and I had this sudden panic of that feeling I had in the hospital that I wasn't going to be able to breathe. And, for anyone who has experienced that level of panic, it's terrifying and it takes over your mind and your body. And, and I was walking and I was saying to myself, I can't breathe. What's going to happen? What if I have to call an ambulance in the middle of the street? And what I know now is that I was okay in that moment. But
before you continue, was the lady who crushed you in the accident, was she talking to you? Were you in contact with her, or?
no, so I have never heard from her again. And so this for me is one of the biggest learnings that I wanted to share with you is this deep sense of betrayal. Like, how do you move forward with that level of betrayal from someone that you trust and trusted? And so I believe that she was scared and I believe that she was worried about the legal implications. And so I never heard from her. She never said sorry. She never acknowledged the accident. And so in 4 years, I've never heard from this woman. And she still owns 2 yoga studios in Edmonton. And she, I see her and I can see her online sometimes. And that's been very challenging. Like she owns 2 yoga studios and she has a family. And it's been very hard for me to see her living her life, knowing the depth of suffering that I've experienced. So a lot of my learning has been how to develop my own sense of resilience and how to develop my own sense of worth and trust and faith without being able to receive that from somebody else, without being able to receive it from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I may ask too, again, she's the one who caused the accident, So did she provide any support just to take care of you and even like the hospital or the insurance? Did they take care of you? Like, did they provide any support for you in that time that you? Mm-hmm.
No, so I have not received any support from the woman who was driving. Luckily, I feel very blessed to be in Canada because we have this health insurance here. So because I was self-employed, I didn't have any of my own private insurance and I didn't have benefits. And, my entire income was gone, which meant that I did not have income to pay for social work or therapy or physical therapy or healing. At all. So I feel very blessed that in the Canadian medical system, I was able to receive the surgeries that I needed. So 4 years later, the driver's insurance company is the one who, I'm not able to talk very much about that part, but I will say that it is very, very challenging to go through a case with someone's insurance company, a legal case. It is repetitive trauma and distress because you have to fight for every single thing that you are looking for. And so 4 years later, I'm still working with her insurance company to receive compensation. So at this point, they covered some medical expenses at the beginning, a few physiotherapy appointments, but I have not received compensation for the accident yet.
Oh, wow.
So that is very challenging. And what, one thing that I like to share with people and that like to talk about with people who have gone through this is that when these things happen, they don't happen in a bubble. So it's not just a physical accident, but what happens over the course of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years is the greater impact on the rest of your life. Yes. And that's something I've spent a lot of time exploring, how this has impacted relationships in my life and personal relationships and, my ability to live independently, my ability to have relationships, to my ability to go after jobs and careers and education. So the very challenging part of something like this is that a lot of those opportunities taken from you because um, there's a lot of money, like thousands and thousands of dollars are spent in physical and emotional healing from these types of accidents. So, so that's something that I work on every day, which is what can I create now in my life in terms of work, in terms of education, in terms of my career to move forward in my life. And this is really where a lot of my work has been, is that figuring out like how to adapt from this point. Because I think that once the physical, so, I still have a lot of daily physical pain that I have learned how to manage. But the bigger question is, what do you do on an emotional level to move forward? And that's where I think, okay, so what's the difference in the mindset between having this mindset where you stay stuck in anger and resentment and hatred and grief and fear, and that just stays you stuck in this cycle of what if this didn't happen and I wish this didn't happen, so there you can stay in that mindset. Or how do you move out of that mindset into, I'm going to change and adapt and find a new way to be in the world? So much of my work has been how to cultivate that sense of faith and trust and empowerment for that experience. So, one thing I know is that there's no guidebook for people. A lot of the reason why I speak openly about this experience is because I wish when I was starting this journey, I heard other people like myself talk about this experience. I understand why people don't talk about it. It's because it can be very exhausting. It's very personal. It's very personal to share the level of loss that you can experience emotionally and financially and physically. But the other part of that is that start this journey, like at the beginning of this journey, it's just chaos because you're on Percocets and painkillers and, trying to find a new normal. And, it takes a long time to move from that chaos into this place where your brain is even able to think about what can I do right now for myself? And how can I regain faith? And what do I need to access in terms of support? So I wish I had heard somebody else talk like that because, you can find a lot of people online who present themselves like their life is perfect. And that's very hard. Like I really had a hard time. I left the yoga world for a long time because I saw a lot of people talking about this idea of like, I saw a lot of people really diminishing or what we call spiritual bypassing, this idea of, oh, it's no big deal, everything is fine. And at that time, I really, really, I couldn't hear those words because I was thinking, that's a very privileged mindset. Like, if you have been through any type of pain or grief or trauma, the place that I come from is this idea that we have to acknowledge the reality of those experiences in order to then rise up and to be more uplifted. Because if we try to pretend that doesn't impact people, we're not doing ourselves or anybody else any favors. So, so I really, what I didn't find in my search for inspiration initially was people with having real conversation, people really acknowledging This is sometimes what pain can feel like. This is what fear can feel like. This is what suffering can feel like. And you know, that's where I know one thing that we're going to talk a little bit more about is where do you find that inspiration and that faith and that trust?
Yes. And Carla, by the way, let me ask you, it's really not easy for, for a person who went through that trauma, that what, you still get, some times where you have even the scars and you're like, how did the process of letting go, now you're like, the Carla that was in that accident or, that's
Mm-hmm.
it's really different from the Carla that I'm seeing right now. So I would like to
Absolutely.
ask, like, how was the process for you? How did you let go? Sometimes if you have those accidents, you even have trauma even after that, those surgeries, you went through many surgeries. But
Mm-hmm.
now I would like to ask you, how did the process of letting go of that pain, even after that, the lady who crushed you did not say sorry. It's not easy, Sometimes even if a person says sorry, you feel like it's not a double pain. You just feel one pain of but it's
Right,
not
right.
easy if a person crushes you and then again they go, not even saying sorry, not even, So how was
Yeah.
the process for you to let go, to not think about, you still even meet the lady, but you are okay. You are
Mm-hmm.
able now to share the testimony that you went through. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us more about, how was the process for you to let go?
Okay, so one thing that I really had to learn was to ask for help. And I really realized this has been a big learning for me is that, you know, when we see other people go through loss, you
Mm-hmm.
know, they have someone in their family who passes away, passes on. If someone is hurt or injured, it's
Yes.
very, it's very easy to say, oh, let me know if you need anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized being in that position where I did need help, that was very hard for me to, because it's not easy when you're in that midst of deep loss
Yes.
to make a list and say, okay, I need this help from Bella. I need this help from this person. So what I realized is that the type of help that I needed to ask for, which is very specific. So I needed to learn how to say to somebody, um, can you call me at 2 o'clock today and can we do a guided meditation together? Or, you know, would you be able to take me grocery shopping at 4 o'clock on Thursday? So
Mm-hmm.
I really, really needed to learn very specifically to understand what I needed and then how to
Yes.
translate that into words.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that really has allowed me to move forward
Mm-hmm.
is the amount of support that I've had. So I did a lot of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I had some really, really wonderful social workers that I worked with, and we did a lot of trauma specific therapy. And so
Yes.
something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and I won't go into all the specifics of how that works, but it is a process where you are guided through recalling the feelings that you had
Mm-hmm.
moving through that trauma. And what that does is that, you know, the idea is that when you go through a traumatic event,
Mm-hmm.
the memory becomes scattered in your brain. So when you're in a
Yes.
car accident, instead of remembering that as one cohesive memory in your brain, you remember that as bits and pieces. So the woman's car was a gray SUV. There was this song playing on the radio. I was wearing these boots. Like you remember all the pieces individually,
Mm-hmm.
and that panic can happen many years later. Is that, you know, walking down the street 2 years later you can see someone driving that same gray SUV, and it can trigger a full panic attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of trauma therapy is working on allowing you to bring that memory back into one cohesive memory so you can let it go on a neurological level in your brain.
Yes.
And, you know, so in terms of my emotional spiritual growth, you know, I spent a lot of time doing things like mindfulness and meditation.
Yes.
I would listen to, like, you know, with my dad, you know, virtual services from his church that would be streamed online, and, you know, just listen to words and listen to hymns and listen to, because as you know, well, like, where we do find this idea of faith and of trust is in the world of, church, of spirituality, of
Yes.
having trust. And so, at the beginning for me, that was just hearing the words. Even if I
Yes.
didn't realize that I was processing, just hearing that information continually flood my mind
Mm-hmm.
made a big difference for me. And
Yes.
just hearing somebody else talk about overcoming and faith and uplifting,
Yes.
that started to get my brain into
Yes.
thinking these thoughts, right? So, I really had a lot of support in that way. And, I would have meditation teachers come to my house and
Yes.
do a guided process of meditation with me. I would have, friends who are pretty involved in their church communities in Toronto, who are really involved in singing and music and, with lyrics that are strong and are uplifting, and who, like friends who have like a very strong faith in God and their own faith. Like I would speak to them, and sometimes even just through messaging, like
Yes.
I had one friend that would message me every single day and give me, like, even if it was one sentence, and say things to me like, just stand in your power, just stand in your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things, like, it doesn't take, you don't have to read 100-page book to get that message. Sometimes
Yes.
it's just one word or one sentence
Yes.
to take forward into your day.
Yes.
Um, so it's a process, though. That's one thing that I like to share with
Mm-hmm.
people, again, that I wish I had heard more of, and is that this is a process that happens over
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Letting go doesn't happen in one quick instance. Letting go happens
Mm-hmm.
with hard work
Yes.
and practice. Like, it's not magic. It is tuning in and having faith in your own ability to see a new future for yourself, or to see a
Yes.
new vision for yourself, or
Yes.
there's a lot of acceptance. Like, that was a big thing, is I have to accept
Yes.
that my life and my physical body is never going to be the same.
Yes. Oh, that's so bummer to hear. It was really like a bad accident. And there's another question that they asked, and I
Mm-hmm.
would like you to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
How long was your recovery? Are you completely recovered physically? And how about your mind? Are you having nightmares or panic attack? Basically, like traumatic stress syndromes.
Okay, so I think after 4 years, I'm still recovering. However, a lot has changed. So
Yes.
physically, I still have quite a lot of pain in my foot. I went from teaching and practicing yoga 10 to 20 times a week in terms of teaching and practicing, and now I teach once or twice a week, and
Yes.
I practice once or twice a week. So I've done a lot of recovery, but I now know how to manage that physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of my emotional well-being, um, I think it is going to be a lifelong journey, but
Yes.
I have not had a big panic attack in about 2 years.
Yes.
Um, I do sometimes. So it's funny, well, not funny, but the things that are a trigger for me are things that you wouldn't expect. And so it is things like going to a wedding where I see everybody else, all these other women in beautiful heels, and I
Yes.
can't wear those shoes.
Yeah.
And it's not about the shoes or the material part of it. It's about the fact that that choice has been taken from me.
Yes.
It's going out to buy a pair of shoes and resenting that I have to pay $400 for orthotic shoes that
Mm-hmm.
look like they're made for somebody who is 90 years old. And so it's been a big process for me of, um, again, accepting. And so, for the most part in my days, I have a strong practice now. I wake up in the morning and I do a meditation, and I write and I journal, and so emotionally I've made huge steps forward, but I also know that there are triggers, and sometimes you can't always predict when that's going to be.
Yes.
So that, I think, is a lifelong journey that I still practice, and I still look for support. I still work with therapists to work on that.
Yes. I like the thing you say that you said it before. You were saying like it does not require a person to tell you like the whole scriptures, but just one word can make you have faith. You know, can encourage you. Can and the people who were, you say, the people who are surrounding you, who are giving you some biblical scriptures or like to encourage you. It was something that you didn't need many things from the Bible, but just one word which encouraged you. And I'm really glad that you heard that word, which now, you know, it kept with you, even though you were into that, but you had a small word which you went with till now. So, and I have another question. And it says, how is Carla now after injury? What lessons did you learn from the problems which you think can help a person going in the same problem like you?
Okay, so this is a big one. I've learned many, many, many lessons. So one thing that I think is important is working through the process of not holding on so tightly to the life that you used to live.
Yes.
And be open to the idea that there is a new life and maybe even a better life available to you.
Yes.
And right away after the accident, I did not want to hear people say things like, oh, this is a blessing in disguise, or there's going to be something you learn from this. Like, I wasn't ready in that year after the accident. Now, 4 years later, what I know is that I have been able to take those lessons of pain and suffering and trauma and anger and frustration, and I've been able to turn them into new work for myself. So now I do, I do now guided talks online. I do guided meditations online. I run events for other people going through adversity. And so I know that I couldn't do that work now if I had not been through that accident.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the biggest lessons, is to, even if you can't see what it's going to look like,
Yes.
just even repeating every day to yourself,
Yes.
I trust that a new life is available to me. I trust that a new life is available to me.
Yes.
I trust that new people are going to enter my life. I trust that I will continue to work and to be important and to do important work in the world.
Yes. Wow. I like what you say, like, even if you don't see a way, but I trust that there's another life coming. And it's really a good word for a person who is going through the same problem, that to trust God that there's another life. And I can say that, Carla, you are a good example to the people around the world, that the Carla who was in the accident, who had no hope, but right now, you really trusted that there's another life, and there you are. So I'm just happy that you're encouraging somebody out there.
Thank you.
And is there like something or advice that you can give a person, meanwhile we are about to end our show today. Is there like an advice that you can give a person who is really, going in the problem, but they don't have hope, right? And like for you went, I can count that as the double problem that you went through. Even for the person, you still meet them. Some people are not. It's not easy for them, to meet a person. They even have they're going to pay back or what, but you are having a heart, you let go everything. And so like, what can you tell a person going in a problem in a way that for them to trust as in the process? You say like it's not something that's gonna come right now, because you still face, even you still have the scars, you still
you still, there's some things which you can do right now, but you didn't give up. You're like, I have to keep on, there's another life. So what can you give, like what advice or what can you tell a person who is really like about to give up or to quit some things because of what they're going through? Sometimes it's a barrier to, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I think that the most important thing, when you're in those days or those moments right after a deep loss or grief or pain,
Yes.
where you can't see the light, those moments where you're in that dark tunnel and it does not seem like there's another way possible. I think that the biggest advice I would have is remembering, if every day you can say one word, like just keep going.
Yes.
Have a vision of a new life.
Yes.
This life is possible for me.
Mm-hmm.
I trust this is possible.
Yes.
Because in those moments, in the first 6 months or first year afterwards, I had a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of, like, I had lost all connection to my own sense of faith and trust. And so I did not see the path at that time. But if you can do one thing for yourself every day,
Yes.
and I think that is the best advice that I have, which is that understanding that this is a process, right? Like this is something that can take 5 years, it can take 10 years, but the amount of growth you will experience is amazing. However, to get through those hours and those days, not setting unrealistic expectations for yourself. So, in that moment where I was in a wheelchair in my apartment that had stairs,
Yes.
it was unrealistic to think I'm going to be teaching a yoga class by next month. But if I could have one expectation for myself and say, by next month, I would like to be able to walk in crutches instead of a wheelchair.
Yes.
By this afternoon, I would like to say that I was able to make myself a healthy smoothie. Sometimes it's very small, but I think the other important part is to reward yourself when you meet those goals. And when I reward, that could be something as simple as listening to a song that you love. It can be smiling at yourself in the mirror. It can be listening to a prayer that you love. It can be, like something that feels good to you.
Yes.
And so I'd say just like one step every single day, and
yes,
and acknowledge, and it can be helpful as well, like even on your fridge, to keep a list of rather than a list of these are my 10 things to do, at the end of every day, your list of gratitude of like, I'm so grateful today that I was able to have a bath. I'm so grateful I was able to talk to my friend on the phone. And, so I think that idea of practicing gratitude and remembering what we do have, because, throughout this accident, I really had to step into remembering, like, I have a family that loves me. I am otherwise healthy in my body and my mind. I'm surrounded by people who love and support me. And so sometimes when you go through a lot of pain or loss, you forget the fact that you still have so much love in your life. And is like, we need to give ourselves reminders of that, whether you put pictures of your family and your friends and your church and your community all over your walls, like remember that love and that gratitude is available to us all the time.
So thank you very much, and it's really so interesting and encouraging that even a person out there, going, it does not matter about how long you are in a problem, but the lessons that you have right now, which can teach even a person later. And now that was some years ago, like 4 years ago, but now you have a testimony that you are sharing. And before you had no clue of what was going on, but right now you have a good testimony that can help a person that is going to help a person. And the thing that I'm going to say is that I'm just going to give me time. I'm going to explain for the people who doesn't understand English. And so that they can be able to understand, and they can be able to understand your testimony, so they can also be touched and helped by your story. And meanwhile, at that time, there's a scripture that is in the Bible that I want to share with people. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. It says that he comforts us in all our tribulation, so that we also may be comforted by those who are suffering. This is a word that it's really like, I think it's really related. You went through something and God comforted you, and now you are comforting somebody right now because you already you were comforted. And I feel like before, because you did not give up in what you were doing. So this is the time, and it's really helping a person. And your story, that's why this is inspired that you were inspired, but though it was just, a bad story, but it's really now giving a courage. It's really now, building somebody out there right now. Though you went through that, but it's really so amazing that now the Carla who was before, it's not the same Carla that I can see right now. Though there are some barriers which were there, because you had dreams, you had, I read your article and it was just showing how you had dreams to travel, to do what, but out of nowhere a problem just came and it became a barrier for you. So, but it didn't stop you from dreaming, right? So it's that it's time that the testimony which is inside of people to share that, and it can comfort other people. Yeah, thank you very much, Carla. So I'm just gonna summarize a little bit for the people who don't understand English.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a great day. So
thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. I think it is these kind of programs that I wish I had access to in going through this. So I think you're doing amazing work, because this is sometimes it can be a matter of literally saving someone's life. When someone has no hope, but sometimes you just need to hear stories and programs like this. So I really am grateful that you're doing this work.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And God bless you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Bella. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm just gonna explain a little bit of what Carla talked about in Kinyarwanda. Ndabashuje nanone yitwa Carla Beharry nk'uko yabivuze. Yakoze accident, hanyuma agira ibikomere cyane, ndetse n'uwamutaye cyangwa uwamukoresheje accident ntiyanamwitaho, ntiyabona ubufasha, yari wenyine. Byari bigoye cyane kugira ngo yongere agire ubuzima ku byo yifuzaga, uko ibyo yashakaga kugeraho. Byari bigoye cyane kugira ngo yongere abigereho, kuko ni nk'aho ubuzima bwe bwari busubiye inyuma kubera impanuka yari agiyemo. Ariko uwamugonze yagize ikibazo cyane, n'akaguru ke karahindukira, yakubise n'umutwe kuri pavement, hanyuma kuri bordire niko navuga. Hanyuma biza gutuma bamutwara kwa muganga, ariko ntigeze hamagara ambulance, ntigeze hamagara iki. So byari bigoye cyane ko yifuzaga ko banamutaho ku muhanda aho kugira ngo bamujyane uko bari bamutwaye. Ntibamuhaye uko yagenda neza nk'uko yari arwaye, bamutware neza. Bamugejeje kwa muganga, mbese nawe aheruka bamuta kwa muganga, ntazi uko, mbese ntibuka nawe uko byari bimeze. Ariko mu gihe yari ari muri ibyo ngibyo, muri iyo accident, bagiye bamwitaho cyane. Gusa ikintu yatubwiyeho cyane ni uko urashobora kuba uri mu kibazo igihe kirekire cyane, kuko yabayemo igihe kirekire cyane, ariko ataragarura forme, ataragarura uko yari ameze, ataragaruka mbese mu buzima busanzwe. So byari bigoye cyane, ariko ntiyigeze atakaza icyizere, ntiyigeze atakaza ibyiringiro, yakomeje atubwira ngo uko ubyutse urema undi munsi nanone wongere wumve ko hari ubundi buzima. Yavuze akana aravuga ngo abyuka mu gitondo, ikintu cya mbere yabwira nk'umuntu ucitse intege hanze cyangwa se wumva ko birarangiye, ubyuke mu gitondo wumve ko hari ubundi buzima, ejo hari undi munsi, ni umunsi mwiza wongeye kubona, ntibikaguca intege. So niyo mpamvu umuntu uri hariya hanze twaguhereza ibyiringiro, icyo uri kunyuramo icyo ari cyo cyose, ntago igihe uri kucyunyura kuba iminsi yaba myinshi uri kunyura muri icyo kigeragezo cyangwa se muri iyo mu bintu byinshi waba uri kunyuramo, ntago ari cyo cya mbere cyagakwiye kuba cyafata umwanya wawe cyane, ahubwo icya mbere ni uko ugira ibyiringiro ko nyuma y'ibyo ngibyo hari ubundi buzima. Nawe ntiyari abizi, yari afite ibyizere cyangwa se yari afite dream, navuga ko yari afite inzozi zo kuzagera ahantu, ariko igihe kimwe byose bisa nkaho bibaye zero, ariko ntibyamubujije gukomeza gutekereza, ntibyamubujije gukomeza kwiringira ko hari ubundi buzima azagira. Niyo mpamvu n'ubu ngubu uwo Carla twari tuzi mbere akiba iyo mpanuka siwe w'uyu munsi, yagize ibyiringiro, yumva ko hari ubundi buzima nyuma y'ibyo yanyuzemo. So nawe uri aho ngaho rero wumve ko ugize ubundi buzima, icyo uri kunyuramo ntigifata umwanya munini cyane kuruta uko watekereza iby'Imana igiye kugukorera ejo hazaza. Twasomye ijambo riri mu Bakorinto ba kabiri, igice cya mbere umurongo wa 4, haranditse ngo iduhumuriza mu makuba yacu yose kugira ngo natwe tubone uko duhumuriza abari mu makuba yose, tubahumurisha ihumure twahawe n'Imana. So iki ni ikintu cya mbere ugomba gutekerezaho cyane. Imana iraduhumuriza kugira ngo igihe runaka, igihe nk'iki, nawe uri guhumuriza undi muntu, wumve ko impamvu uri kunyura mu cyo waba uri kunyuramo cyose, wumve ihumure ry'Imana. Uyu munsi ni ijambo ribitubwiye ngo iduhumuriza mu makuba yose tunyuramo, ni ukugira ngo natwe tuzahumurize abazaba ari kubinyuramo. Bivuze ngo kuba bihari ntago bitangaje, biragomba kuba, ariko ihumure uhawe muri uyu munsi ryo kugira ngo uhumure, kugira ngo uzakomeze igihe runaka, nawe uzakomeze undi muntu uzaba uri kunyura mu kibazo runaka. Ndabashimiye cyane rero mwebwe mwese mwabanye natwe, nanabasaba gukomeza usangize, mbese ntubyiharire, usangize n'abandi kugira ngo babashe kumva ubutumwa, kugira ngo hagire ukorwaho. Ihumure uhawe uyu munsi, navuga ngo ntubyiharire wenyine, ihumure uhawe uyu munsi ubisangize n'abandi kugira ngo undi uri mu kigeragezo abashe kwakira iryo humure. Hari umuntu hanze hari utazi nuko n'Imana ihari, hari utazi ko hari n'uwamuha ijambo ryiza, ariko iri ni ijambo rije kugira ngo wowe ugize ihumure muri aka kanya, wowe wumvise iri jambo ko ihumure duhabwa rivuye ku Mana, nawe urisangiza kugira ngo undi muntu hariya hanze yumve kuri iryo humure. Ntubyihererane rero, usangize n'abandi kugira ngo ab'imitima yabo imaze gusubira inyuma, bari kunyura mu kintu babona ko nta nzira, hari ubundi buzima, hari ihumure duhawe n'Imana, kandi kugira ngo natwe duhumurize abandi. Murakoze cyane rero mwebwe mwese mwari kumwe natwe, Imana ibahe umugisha. Naho utaha. Bye.